But I am very pleased to start this hour with an absolute legend in the sports media field, because joining us right now to talk some Major League Baseball here on You Better You Bet is the great Tim Kurkjian from ESPN, on Twitter at Kurkjian_ESPN. I've been watching him and reading him for a really long time. One of the most knowledgeable and enthusiastic minds and voices when it comes to Major League Baseball. Tim, Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet. I said I'm a big fan, sincerely appreciate the time. How's it going on this Tuesday?
Well, Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome, and I'd like to start, Tim, before we actually get into the games being played on the field. Can you please take us through a day in the life of Tim Kurkjian during Major League Baseball season? Because you know everything that's happening with every team. I'm guessing you're watching multiple games every day. What is your life like during Major League Baseball season?
Well, it starts really early every morning, usually at 5 o'clock, with a Diet Mountain Dew, since I'm the only man on earth that doesn't need to drink coffee. I devour the box scores as quickly as possible, and if I haven't absolutely memorized them by 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm feeling really uncomfortable. So that's always the first stop, is the box scores and a Diet Mountain Dew, and I feel really good when I'm done with that, because I feel at least I have an understanding of what happened the night before. And then, yes, I wait until games are on. Until then, I'm looking stuff up. I'm making phone calls, unless I'm going to a game, which is, there's no substitute for being at the ballpark. So it all starts first thing in the morning, and then all I do the rest of the day, and I'm a grandfather of 5, I have children, all that stuff. I have other things I have to do, but in my whatever work time I have, I am watching games. I can barely find Netflix if you ask me to on my television. I watch baseball games, and I'm almost 70 years old, and I still love to sit around and watch games all day and all night if needed.
I absolutely love it. And I have these conversations with like friends of mine sometimes, Tim, where they'll say to me, what TV shows are you watching? And I say, well, the NBA playoffs are on every night. So I certainly commiserate with you on that. It's basically just sports when you choose this for a living. And we absolutely love it. I know I said we would get to the games in a second, but I need to ask you this question now. What went into your decision to not drink coffee, or maybe it's just caffeine in general, no caffeine? How did you arrive at Diet Mountain Dew as opposed to coffee or another beverage as your morning drink of choice?
Well, I used to drink a Coke in the morning, and then that probably didn't do me much good. So I switched to Diet Coke, and then I said, all right, maybe too much cola on my teeth is not a good idea. So about 25 years ago, I switched to Diet Mountain Dew, thinking maybe it's better for my teeth. I don't think it is. I don't think anything's good for my teeth at this point. But that's where the switch came. It makes me feel good. It doesn't wake me up, because I think I'm absolutely oblivious to caffeine after all these years. But it tastes really good, and I love to. It's my companion while I'm doing my box scores every morning.
Why, this is not I like coffee. It's not a criticism, different strokes for different folks. Why not coffee? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I tried a cup, but I'd never tried a cup until I was on co-hosting the Mike and Mike in the Morning show about 25 years ago. And Mike Greenberg, who was the host of the show, I was filling in for Golick, could not believe that a grown man, especially a sports writer, had never had a cup of coffee. So I had one on the air as part of a gimmicky, ridiculous thing we did. And it didn't taste bad. I just didn't like it. Was a little bitter, and I just felt like what I drink in the morning tastes better. I know I'm in the vast minority here, but this is what works for me, and I do a lot of things in life that work for me that other people would look at and go, this is really dumb.
Can you give us another? I just think you're very interesting. So forgive me for asking another question about you and not baseball. Can you give us something else?
Well, it's baseball related. I cut out every box score of every game for 20 years and taped them in a giant box score notebook. And I never, ever missed a day cutting out the box scores, which I think we can all agree is a streak far more impressive than anything done by Cal Ripken Jr. It was my way, though, of keeping up. This is pre-internet, really, keeping up with the games. And when I would take a trip across the country, say Washington to San Diego, I would have my box score book with me for that season, and I could leaf through it and see what the Padres were doing at, in middle innings, or how they were platooning at second base or whatever. That's the kind of stuff that was really important to me and still is. I just can't clip the box scores out of the newspapers anymore, because the newspaper industry doesn't have very many box scores anymore. So it was a sad day after 20 years that I had to give it up.
Well, I mean, at least Cal Ripken sat because he couldn't do it anymore. You didn't give up your streak voluntarily. I'm joking, obviously, about Cal Ripken. But yeah, little bit of a difference there with you and Cal Ripken and those various streaks. All right. Now we can talk about some games, talk about some Major League Baseball, Tim. And maybe the Tarik Skubal situation is your answer to this question. Maybe it's something else. And I know you'll have a great answer because, people know your enthusiasm for the sport and your love for the sport. What is Tim Kurkjian's favorite story right now in Major League Baseball, and why?
Well, there are so many great stories out there every year, but I think the best story of this season is just the dominant pitching that we watch. I mean, I'm not sure we've ever seen anybody quite like Jacob Misiorowski throwing 47 pitches in one start at 101 miles an hour, and having a 9-inning one-hitter with no walks, 15 strikeouts, and throwing only 95 pitches, and the 95th pitch is at 103 miles an hour. And he has separated himself a little bit from everyone else, which is really saying something. But when you look at Paul Skeens and Chris Sale and Christopher Sanchez and Mason Miller as a reliever, they are everywhere. The stuff we see on a daily basis is like nothing I've ever seen. I say out loud to myself, whether I'm at a game or watching on TV, how does anybody get a hit anymore? That's how good the stuff is that we see. I just saw Bryce Harper recently, and he said when Manny Machado got to first base in the game they were playing in, he looked at Manny and said, we really should have taken better advantage of 2012, he said, when guys were throwing 88 to 90 with a curveball at 75. He goes, those days don't exist anymore, and they certainly don't. So every day I look at the box scores, and I see these ridiculous strikeout rates and this incredible stuff by the pitchers. I think that's as big a story as we have today.
This can be, Tim, a pencil, not pen answer, because it can change based on the week or the month, the season, etc. Is it safe to say right now, in your estimation, that Jacob Misiorowski is the best pitcher in baseball? And if not, who currently holds that mantle in your eyes?
Well, he is at the moment. He's only made, 27 major league starts. So, Paul Skeens and a bunch of other guys have all sorts of, ways to say, hey, look what I've done for a much longer time. But if you're asking me right now, who is the one pitcher that I need to watch, it's him. And it's not just because the velocity is certainly unprecedented for since we've been tracking this stuff for the last 25, 26 years. It's his command, which is ridiculous, and his arm slot, which is a little different than a lot of other starting pitchers or pitchers, period. It's a little bit lower than 3/4. The hitters have trouble seeing it. And when you have trouble seeing something, period, you're in trouble. When you have trouble seeing something thrown at 104 miles an hour, good luck. So at the moment, he is the best pitcher in baseball. But that has changed about 5 or 6 different times this season. That's how good the pitching has been in the big leagues this year.
And Tarik Skubal, right, of the Detroit Tigers, has absolutely been, if not the best pitcher in baseball, on the short list of best pitchers in baseball the last couple of years. Multiple-time AL Cy Young Award winner. And this seems to be, Tim, like the or one of the omnipresent storylines in Major League Baseball. So the Tigers are playing a little better right now. Have won 4 straight entering tonight and have won 6 of 10. Will they keep Skubal? Will they trade him? What is your sense as to what will happen coming up this summer with the Detroit Tigers and Tarik Skubal?
Yeah, and that will be the biggest story in baseball as we move forward. There is no way around that. So what the Tigers want, and I just saw them the other day against the Blue Jays, call their game on the radio, is they want to get back into contention and have Tarik Skubal lead them down the stretch, make the playoffs, and then, in theory, be a dangerous team in October. However, until this 4-game winning streak, there was no indication that that was going to happen. But don't forget, 2 years ago, they went to Williamsport for the Little League Classic game, and they were hopelessly out of the pennant race. There's no chance to make the playoffs. And yet, not only did they make the playoffs, they won a playoff series. So this is what the Tigers want, is to make the playoffs with Skubal leading them there. However, being a free agent at the end of the year, and he's going to get money that no pitcher maybe has ever gotten. They have to trade him. They have to trade him at the trade deadline if they are out of the playoff race. And this is going to be a very difficult decision, because who trades the best pitcher in the American League? Well, the Tigers might not have a choice. If they're going to rebuild and get better for next year and beyond, I think they're going to have to deal him. But I'm in favor of hanging on to him if they've got a real chance to make the playoffs, because in the American League, where there are no really great teams right now, you make the playoffs, you have a chance to go to the World Series.
Tim Kurkjian here with us on the show from ESPN. You Better, You Bet, Westwood One Sports, Nick Kostos and you, presented by BetMGM. Tim, if indeed the Tigers do trade Tarik Skubal, so we get a little further into the summer and they're not really in the mix, we don't get the sense that they're really going to be a contender come October, what is your best guess as to where Tarik Skubal could end up?
Well, that's a good question. You have to look at some big market teams, because only a big market team is going to be able to give up what it's going to take to get Skubal and then be able to pay him long term. Because you can't give up 5 players for Tarik Skubal at the end of July, beginning of August, and then just lose him to free agency 2 months later. So almost by definition, it has to be a big market team. We've talked about the Mets a bunch of times, that the Mets are obviously in trouble about making the playoffs, but with all the expectations there, they're short on starting pitching. They can't just not make the playoffs this year and then not make the playoffs next year. So he would be someone that certainly would interest the New York Mets. So that's at least one big market team to keep your eye on. But we are a long way away from a decision being made on Tarik Skubal.
I think, Tim, if you asked a lot of baseball fans, maybe even just casual baseball fans, right? What will the World Series matchup be this year? And this is not to insinuate that they're correct, just that I think that this would be the consensus opinion, is that it'll be a rematch from a couple of years ago with the Yankees and the Dodgers. If that is not going to be the case, and it could very well not be the case, who do you think upends the apple cart? And maybe it's a team in both leagues, and maybe you think it won't be the Yankees or the Dodgers. But as we kind of project this out into October, into the World Series, what do you think about that consensus opinion, the 2 favorites, the Yankees and the Dodgers in the AL and the NL, and who could potentially upend that apple cart?
Well, that's who I would pick at this point. But thank goodness I don't have to pick at this point, because it's June the 23rd. I really like the Mariners, who haven't gotten going yet in the American League, but they've got Cal Raleigh back. Their starting pitching is tremendous. They have a deep, versatile, powerful bullpen, and I think it's only a matter of time before they pull away in that division. So they would be the second team at this point for me in the American League. The National League, there are a bunch more contenders, but you cannot count out the Phillies, who have gotten things going a little bit better here under Don Mattingly. You can't count out the Braves, even though injuries have really set them back. And you should never count out the Brewers anymore. The way the Brewers have played with their starting pitching, Kyle Harrison, and, of course, Jacob Misiorowski, and the way they score runs. So I think there are candidates to knock the Dodgers out of the favorite in the National League, but I'm still staying with the Dodgers. They've had a million problems this year, and they still were the first team to 50 wins this year.
Tim, my final, I think this will be the final question. You have lived and continue to live an extraordinary baseball life and have followed the sport obsessively, and I mean that in a very complimentary way, for a long time. What is your personal, and this could be an era or this can be a singular season, what is Tim Kurkjian's either favorite era of baseball, for whatever the reason, or favorite singular season of baseball that you've watched in your life, and why?
Well, I think it's the mid-'80s, so I'm going to go with an era. It was 40 years ago, let's say. And look, I was a relatively young, impressionable writer. I was on the beat as a full-time baseball beat writer for a newspaper for the first time. I got to see Cal Ripken, Robin Yount, Paul Molitor, Alan Trammell, George Brett. I got to see those guys play all the time. I learned how the game was played watching guys like that. And even though players today are bigger, stronger, faster, and probably better than ever, that era was the most important and the most special one and my favorite because, again, I was young and learning so much at the time, and I'm still learning, by the way. But I just loved the way the game was played back then. Not that I don't love it today, but the ball was in play more often. We didn't have 18 strikeouts per game. The players were fundamentally sound because they had to be, because they couldn't overpower the sport with their physical gifts like guys do today. So that was my favorite time, was the mid-'80s for a million different reasons. There was some amazing baseball played right around that time.
We all hope this is not the case, Tim, but if there is a lockout and there's little or no baseball played next year, what are you going to do with yourself on a daily basis?
Well, the last time we had a work stoppage was because of COVID, so I did a daily this date in baseball history where I did something like, it was called the Daily Fix, where I just kind of reminded everyone this is what happened on March 27th and took it all the way every day until we started playing again in July. Frankly, I'm not sure what I'm going to do this year next year if there's no baseball. I've seen every Columbo episode about 4 different times, so I'm not sure that's an option. But I would just become full-time grandfather if that happened, and I love those duties, but I need to cover baseball, so I am rooting for baseball to be played next year no matter what.
If you could watch one show that you've never seen, so you find yourself with a little more free time, there's one TV show that you could watch that you haven't seen before, what would that TV show be?
Well, again, I'm really showing my weakness here, and there are a lot of weaknesses in my game, but I never saw Breaking Bad, and everyone told me, like, Breaking Bad
it's sensational.
is like the greatest show ever.
Yeah.
Right, and there are a lot of sensational shows that I missed while I was watching a Reds-Pirates game, but this is the life I've carved out for myself. I'm not changing it, but I'd like to binge Breaking Bad sometime, but I'm going to have to wait until November to do that.
It's exciting. Listen, you take it from me, from your old friend Nick Kostos. We just met. You pour yourself a tall glass of Diet Mountain Dew with ice, and you find, now the first season's a little slow, so you make it through like the first couple episodes, and it really goes into overdrive from there. You trust your old pal Nick. I would not steer you wrong. Tim, I really appreciate the time. You're awesome. Thank you very much. I hope to do this down the line.
Okay, Nick. Thanks very much. See you.
Tim Kurkjian joining us here on You Better You Bet.